July 1947. The Second World War had ended only 2 years earlier, but the world was far from peaceful. A new conflict was silently emerging, one that would shape the next half-century of human history. It was the beginning of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were racing to build the world's most advanced military technologies. Nuclear weapons had already changed warfare forever, and governments around the globe had become obsessed with secrecy. Classified projects were everywhere, hidden behind locked doors and military fences. Information had become as valuable as weapons themselves. At the same time, something else was capturing the imagination of the American people. For weeks, newspapers across the United States had been publishing strange stories about mysterious objects flying across the sky. People claimed they had seen shining discs moving at impossible speeds. Others described strange lights hovering silently above mountains and deserts. The term flying saucer had suddenly become part of everyday conversation. No one could explain what these objects were. Were they military aircraft? Were they experimental technologies? Or was humanity witnessing something it had never encountered before? America had become fascinated with the unknown. Yet no one could have imagined that one quiet desert town in New Mexico would soon become the center of one of history's greatest mysteries. Its name was Roswell. Roswell was nothing extraordinary in 1947. It was a small American town surrounded by endless desert landscapes, cattle ranches, and open skies stretching far beyond the horizon. Life there was peaceful and predictable. Families knew one another. Neighbors gathered in local stores. Days passed slowly beneath the burning desert sun. For its residents, Roswell was simply home. But history has a strange way of choosing ordinary places for extraordinary events. Approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell lived a rancher named William Mack Brazel. Like countless others living throughout New Mexico, Brazel spent his days tending to his livestock and maintaining his ranch. His life was simple, quiet, and far removed from politics, military affairs, or scientific discoveries. He had no reason to believe that his name would one day become forever linked to one of the world's greatest mysteries. Then came the night that changed everything. During the first days of July 1947, powerful thunderstorms swept across the New Mexico desert. Lightning illuminated the dark sky while powerful winds moved across the vast empty landscape. Such storms were not unusual for the region, and residents thought little of them. But sometime during that storm, William Brazel heard something unusual. Accounts differ slightly regarding the exact details, as memories recorded years later are not always identical. However, historical reports agree that Brazel became aware that something strange had occurred near his ranch. At first, there was nothing to suggest that this event would become one of history's greatest mysteries. There were no flashing headlines or military investigations. At least not yet, only silence. The following day, Brazel decided to investigate. As he made his way across his property, he discovered something unexpected scattered across the desert floor. Pieces of unusual material covered a surprisingly large area. According to contemporary reports and later descriptions, the debris appeared unlike anything he had personally encountered before. There were thin metallic-like materials reflecting sunlight across the desert sand. There were fragments that seemed remarkably lightweight. Some witnesses would later describe materials that could not easily be bent or permanently damaged, although such descriptions remain part of the historical testimony rather than scientifically verified facts. Whatever Brazel had found, he knew one thing immediately. It did not resemble anything he recognized. It wasn't an ordinary piece of farming equipment. It wasn't immediately identifiable as the remains of a conventional aircraft. And it certainly wasn't something he expected to discover while walking across his ranch that morning. The mystery had begun. Imagine standing alone in the middle of an endless desert landscape in 1947. There are no smartphones, no internet, no 24-hour news channels. Before you lies something you cannot explain, a strange collection of unfamiliar materials spread across the ground beneath an open sky. What would you think? Would you assume it came from an aircraft? Would you believe it was military equipment? Or would you wonder if something impossible had happened during the night? William Brazel faced those questions long before the rest of the world ever would. At first, he did what most ordinary people would have done. He spoke about what he had found. Soon, word of the discovery began spreading beyond the ranch itself. Local authorities became interested in the strange materials, and eventually, military officials would become involved. No one knew it then, but events were already moving towards something much larger than anyone could have imagined. Within days, Roswell would become international news. Military personnel would arrive. Newspapers would print shocking headlines. Official explanations would change. Witnesses would come forward, and a mystery would be born, one that would survive for generations. Even today, nearly 80 years later, millions of people around the world continue asking the same question first raised during that summer of 1947. What really happened in Roswell? Was it merely an unusual misunderstanding during one of America's most secretive periods? Was it connected to classified military technology hidden from the public during the Cold War? Or is there still a missing piece of the story waiting to be discovered? No matter what one believes, one fact remains undeniable. Everything began here, in the silent deserts of New Mexico, with one ordinary rancher and one extraordinary discovery. This was only the beginning. What happened in the New Mexico desert might have remained a local mystery if it weren't for one extraordinary announcement. Soon after the strange debris was discovered, military officials at the Roswell Army Airfield became involved. This was no ordinary military base. It was home to the 509th Bomb Group, the unit responsible for delivering the first atomic bombs during World War II. If anyone could identify military equipment, it was them. Then, on July 8, 1947, the impossible happened. The United States military issued an official press release stating that it had recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. Within hours, newspapers across America were printing shocking headlines. People gathered around radio stations and newspaper stands asking the same question: what had fallen from the sky? But before anyone could find an answer, the story suddenly changed. Only hours later, the military withdrew its original statement and announced that the recovered debris was nothing more than a weather balloon. Photographs were released to support the new explanation, and for many people, the mystery appeared to be solved. Yet for others, this was only the beginning. How could one of America's most important military bases mistake a weather balloon for a flying disc? Why did the official explanation change so quickly? Was it simply a misunderstanding? Or was military secrecy preventing the public from learning the truth? Nearly 80 years later, those questions remain unanswered. One thing, however, is undeniable. The United States military officially announced that it had recovered a flying disc, and only hours later officially announced that it had not. That contradiction is what transformed Roswell from a small town in New Mexico into one of the world's greatest mysteries. And the story was far from over. If the story of Roswell had ended with the military's changing explanations, it might have eventually been forgotten. But it didn't. As the years passed, new questions began to emerge. Witnesses came forward with their own accounts of what they had seen during the summer of 1947. Some spoke of unusual materials scattered across the desert, while others described an unexpected military presence near the crash site. Suddenly, Roswell was no longer just a historical incident. It had become a mystery that refused to disappear. Perhaps the most fascinating part of the Roswell story is the line that separates historical facts from later claims. The historical record confirms that strange debris was discovered, that the military recovered it, and that the official explanation changed within hours. Those facts are well documented. Everything beyond that, however, has become the subject of decades of debate. Over the years, some witnesses claimed they had seen materials unlike anything they had ever encountered. Others spoke of strict military secrecy surrounding the incident. More extraordinary claims would emerge decades later, adding new layers of mystery to an already fascinating story. Yet many of these accounts appeared years, even decades, after the original event. Historians have long pointed out that memories can change over time, making it difficult to separate historical evidence from later interpretations. And that is precisely why Roswell remains so controversial. It exists somewhere between documented history and unanswered questions. For every theory, there is a counterargument. For every witness statement, there are those who ask whether memory itself may have altered the details over time. Perhaps that is what makes Roswell so compelling. It isn't merely about discovering what happened in 1947. It is about understanding how mysteries are created, how stories evolve, and why some questions continue to fascinate us for generations. Nearly 80 years later, people are still asking the same question. Were all the answers revealed to the public? Or does Roswell still hold secrets waiting to be uncovered? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The mystery was growing larger than anyone could have imagined, and in time, the United States government would finally offer a new explanation for what happened in the New Mexico desert. For decades, the mystery of Roswell continued to grow. Books were written, documentaries were produced, and countless theories emerged. Yet one question remained unanswered. What had really crashed in the New Mexico desert in 1947? In the 1990s, the United States government released reports offering a new and more detailed explanation of the Roswell incident. According to these reports, the recovered debris was not a flying disc, nor was it an ordinary weather balloon. Instead, it was part of a highly classified military program known as Project Mogul. Project Mogul was one of America's Cold War secrets. Its mission was to detect Soviet nuclear tests using high-altitude balloons equipped with sensitive monitoring devices. Because the project was classified, military officials could not publicly reveal its true purpose in 1947. This, according to the government, explains why the original story changed so quickly. The weather balloon explanation was simply intended to conceal the existence of a top-secret military operation. For many historians and researchers, Project Mogul provides a logical explanation for the strange materials discovered near Roswell. It also explains the military secrecy that surrounded the incident during the early years of the Cold War. Yet not everyone was convinced. Critics argue that the government's explanation arrived decades after the original event and failed to answer every question raised by witnesses over the years. Others believe that Roswell has become so deeply intertwined with mystery and popular culture that no official explanation will ever satisfy everyone. And perhaps that is the true legacy of Roswell. It is a story where history, secrecy, and speculation have become impossible to separate completely. Was Project Mogul the final piece of the puzzle? Or was it only part of a much larger story? Nearly 80 years later, the debate continues, and one final question still remains. Why does the world refuse to let Roswell be forgotten? Nearly 80 years have passed since that summer morning in 1947. The storms have long disappeared from the New Mexico desert. The newspapers that once shocked America have faded with time, and many of the people who witnessed those extraordinary events are no longer with us. Yet somehow, Roswell remains alive. For most historical events, time provides answers. Documents are released, mysteries are solved, and questions eventually find their explanations. History moves forward, and the world moves on. But Roswell is different. The world never moved on. Generation after generation has continued asking the same question. What really happened in Roswell? Was it simply the remains of a classified military project hidden from the public during the Cold War? Was it an honest mistake made by military officials during a time of confusion and secrecy? Or is there still a missing piece of the story waiting to be discovered? The truth is that no matter which explanation one believes, the Roswell incident has become something greater than the event itself. It has become a symbol of humanity's endless curiosity about the unknown. Perhaps that is why the story has survived for so long. Roswell isn't merely about strange debris discovered in the desert. It is about our desire to find answers to questions that refuse to disappear. Human beings have always looked toward the sky, searching for explanations. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors looked at the stars and wondered what existed beyond them. Today, despite our extraordinary technological achievements, we continue asking many of the very same questions. Are we truly alone? How much do governments keep hidden during times of conflict and national security? And how many mysteries throughout history remain waiting to be uncovered? Roswell exists at the intersection of all these questions. For historians, it represents one of the most fascinating cases of military secrecy in American history. For skeptics, it is an example of how extraordinary stories can grow over time as memories change and speculation replaces evidence. And for others, it remains one of humanity's greatest unsolved mysteries. Perhaps all of them are correct in their own way, because regardless of what happened in 1947, one fact cannot be denied. Roswell changed the world. Before Roswell, the phrase flying saucer was simply another strange headline appearing in American newspapers. After Roswell, it became part of popular culture around the globe. Books were written, films were made, television series, documentaries, and scientific debates followed for decades. Entire generations have grown up knowing the name Roswell without ever setting foot in New Mexico. Very few places in the world have become so closely connected with mystery itself. And perhaps that is Roswell's greatest legacy. Not the answers it provided, but the questions it left behind. Because mysteries possess a strange power over us. They invite us to wonder, to question, and to search for truths that may forever remain beyond our reach. Even today, researchers continue studying historical documents surrounding the incident. Historians continue debating witness testimonies and government reports. And millions of people around the world continue returning to this story, searching for the one detail that might finally reveal the truth. Yet, after nearly 8 decades, Roswell continues guarding its secrets. The desert remains silent, the sky remains unchanged, and the questions remain exactly where they began. What fell from the skies over New Mexico during that summer of 1947? Why did the official explanation change within hours? Did Project Mogul provide the complete answer, or only part of it? No documentary can answer those questions with absolute certainty, and perhaps that is precisely what makes Roswell so extraordinary. Some mysteries are solved by time, others are preserved by it, Roswell belongs to the second kind. It reminds us that history is not always a collection of answers. Sometimes, history is a collection of questions. Questions that survive far longer than the people who first asked them. And so, nearly 80 years later, we find ourselves standing exactly where this story began, in the silent deserts of New Mexico, looking up at the same endless sky, still searching, still wondering, and perhaps that is why Roswell refuses to be forgotten, because it is more than a mystery hidden in the desert. It is a reminder that no matter how much humanity discovers, there will always remain something beyond the horizon waiting to be understood. As long as we continue asking questions, Roswell will continue to live, not as a story about what we know, but as a story about what we may never know. And maybe that is the greatest mystery of all. The truth is still out there, waiting to be found. And with that, we have reached the end of one of history's greatest mysteries. Perhaps we may never know what truly happened in Roswell during that summer of 1947. Perhaps the answers have already been revealed, or perhaps some secrets remain hidden beyond the pages of history. What do you believe? Was Roswell simply a classified military project hidden during the Cold War? Or is there still a missing piece of the story waiting to be discovered? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think. If you enjoyed this documentary and would like to explore more fascinating mysteries, unsolved cases, and hidden stories from history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into the unknown. Thank you for watching, and thank you for spending your time with me. Until our next mystery, take care, and I'll see you in the next story.